today we'll be showing you how to remove the door panel, the window, and the window regulator from an NB Miata. Now if we're only removing the door panel, we only need a Phillips screwdriver at this point. Maybe one of these panel pullers if you want to be extra careful. If we want to remove the window, we want to have something with a 10mm, so a ratchet or a gun like this. If we're going to move beyond that and do the window regulator, then we'll also need a 12mm socket, some needle nose pliers, and if your window is stuck at the bottom or at the top somewhere inaccessible, then you might need one of these flex head ratcheting wrenches to get to the window bolts. Now the only thing holding the door panel on would be a series of clips, two of them on the outside right here, one of them right here. These can easily come out just by using your fingernail. And then a couple Phillips head screws. In an NB2 such as this one, 2001 to 2005, you have one right here holding this little door cup in place. You have one bigger one right up here and one at the lower base of the handle right in there. If you have an NB1, in other words a 99 to 2000 Miata, you'll have the same Phillips up there, but instead of having one down here, you have this little felt piece right in the rest. It just peels back, exposing the one Phillips screw that's holding that portion of the panel in place. Now let's get the panel removed, starting with the outside clips. The small Phillips holding the little door cup in place. The door cup just slides out. Now that all the screws are loose, we just want to peel back. There's a series of clips holding the panel onto the sheet metal. We could use the upholstery tool over there, or we can just do it by hand. Peel back, unloosing one or two clips at a time. Now that it's loose, we just lift up on the panel, and if you have an NB2 or one on up, then you just have to loosen the connector for the power door locks and for the tweeter. And the door panel is off. Now comes the messy part, this vapor barrier that's in place. It's held in by this goo. I like to reuse them if it's still intact. We can just peel back the areas we need to and just put it back into place rather than ripping it out and having to replace it. Now if we're only going to be removing the window and your window regulator works, we want to raise the window up to a level where all three of the bolts that are holding it in place are accessible. Right now they are not very accessible, so when this lower of the three bolts, 1, 2, 3 right here, is accessible by this access hole, then we are good to go. We're able to remove the window easily without having to try to remove those bolts when they're all the way down there at the bottom. Now with those three bolts out, the window is free to move up and about. The only thing that's going to prevent it from coming out is a couple limiters. We have these little guys right here that are on the window. Those can be removed, but I prefer to remove this little brackets right up here. There's a 10mm bolt holding it in place on either side. Now if you notice, the hole is slotted right there for these limiters, but Since you do have the paint mark right there, you can put it back exactly where it was before. And now our window is ready to come out. Now, if you're doing what you really need to be doing and making this car a race car, then you can get this window and just pass it away. All right, if you're continuing on to removing the window regulator, there's a couple 12mm nuts holding it in place up here. There's a couple at the bottom over here, and then there's a series of 3 10mm holding the motor in place up here. There's the connector for the power going to the power window regulator, and there'll be a series of small plastic clips. So first I'm going to start by removing the motor. Peeling back this plastic right here. Careful not to rip it. Now this is the connector right here that powers the regulator. Pulls out. And the 3 10mm. Now at this point we can reach in here and grab the motor. Just make sure it's going to sneak on through there. To get the motor out of the way, basically there's a bar that goes right here. You can remove this 10. Now that these 2 10mm bolts are loose, then we can go ahead and turn this bar. We can turn it out of the way, that way we can grab the motor. And we want to be very careful, especially if you're reusing the regulator, that you don't pull or yank on anything, because these wires right here are very sensitive. And there's a couple of little plastic clips holding them in place. And there's one more back here, which you can basically get with your hand. We have the window regulator motor loose. We just need to loosen this harness so that we can get the regulator to go over this way, because it's just in the way right now. Alright, now we have this harness loose right here. There's a bunch of little clips that are holding it onto the body of the door. Of course, we want to make sure that those are still in good usable condition. So now we can snake this harness through the cables of the window regulator. A little hard to do this with one hand. Alright, there we go. The window regulator is completely loose. So now the window regulator is ready to remove. We'll start with these 12mm. Then we have the 2 at the bottom. Now go ahead and pull up. As you can see, the window regulator is loose. And the area where we need to remove it from is this area right here. So we like to make sure we make this as compact as possible. The regulator with the motor. Once again, making sure there's no stress on any of the components in case you are reusing this one. And then as far as reinstalling a new window regulator, let's say, then you would just be installing it through here. Basically keep about that same profile and get it back in there, and installation is the reverse of removal. And there you have it. If you're building a race car, you are pretty much done. If you're replacing your regulator, just remember, just be very careful with the cables. You're able to put it back in, and everything else goes on exactly how we took it off. Thank you for watching.